I put my father in prison and I don't regret it. Not for a second. He tried to stand there in court like some weathered, broken man, his hair thinner, hands trembling just enough to look pitiful. He played the part of a misunderstood father, a victim of bad luck, pleading for mercy. But I knew the truth. Knew what was behind those wet, trembling eyes. This man wasn't fragile. He was just cornered. People say revenge is hollow. That it corrodes the one who carries it. Maybe. But justice? Justice is a different beast. It's not about rage or pride. It's about memory. About refusing to let someone rewrite history just because they came back wearing a sad smile and a clean shirt. When the cuffs clicked shut, I didn't feel hate. I didn't feel joy either. I felt finished. Like I'd closed a door I had waited my whole life to slam. You don't grow up wanting to destroy your father. I wanted a dad like everyone else. Someone to throw a ball with. Someone who came home when he said he would. But what I got was a man who could lie to your face while looking you in the eye. Who cheated on my mother over and somehow still had the audacity to act like nothing happened. Like loyalty was a burden we were supposed to carry for his sake. He disappeared before I turned 13. No explanations. Just one last slammed door and a promise to send money he never kept. And for a long time I thought maybe that was a mercy. Then Forbes printed my face. 30 under 30, the future of medtech. There I was, next to headlines about innovation and resilience. That same week, he showed up like a ghost with a fresh shave and a recycled smile. Saw the article, he said, clapping me on the shoulder like we had history worth remembering. Proud of you. Proud. That word cut deep. I told him that day, don't come back. Don't confuse headlines with invitations. You left. That chapter closed. He didn't listen. And that was his first mistake. He came back the way a stain does, quiet, clinging, unwanted. The first time he showed up, I let him into my office. I don't know why. Maybe part of me wanted to see his face in the daylight, just to make sure I hadn't imagined him into something worse than he was. Turns out I hadn't. He looked older, sure. The years had done a little damage, faded lines around the mouth, eyes that twitched when the silence got too thick. But deep down, he was the same man who used to walk through our house reeking of whiskey and a different woman's perfume. Same man who used to laugh while my mom cried in the other room. Same man who left without a word and called it taking space. We hadn't spoken in almost 20 years. Just wanted to say how proud I am, he told me, glancing around like he was trying to memorize the square footage. Forbes, huh? My boy, a real scientist. I corrected him. Co-founder. We built diagnostics tech for early autoimmune detection. Not a scientist. A strategist. He smiled too wide. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. That was when I knew this wasn't about pride. This was about proximity to success. He thought my name meant something again, something he could borrow. I told him then, whatever this is, it ends here. Don't show up again. Don't text, don't call, don't find excuses to bump into me. He gave me this look like I'd hurt him. Like I was the ungrateful one. 2 weeks later, he found Clara. Messaged her on Facebook. Then Instagram. Said he was just trying to connect. That family mattered. That she deserved to know who I really was. The message that made my stomach turn was simple. Be careful. He's my son and I love him, but men like us? We're wired a certain way. It's in the blood. He said cheating was genetic. Clara showed me the message without saying a word. I stared at it for a long time, my jaw tight enough to make my teeth ache. I didn't get angry, not at first. Just cold. Like a fuse had been lit somewhere deep in my chest. He didn't just come back. He came back trying to curse me with his own reflection. I was 8 the first time I realized my father was lying to us. Not in the harmless, white lie way dads do to protect their kids. No, this was different. My mom sat at the kitchen table staring at the clock like it had answers. Dinner had gone cold. She didn't even flinch when I asked where he was. He's working late, she said. But I'd heard the voicemail. I wasn't supposed to. I'd picked up the phone too early, accidentally intercepted the message. I heard the voice that wasn't hers. Soft, syrupy, laughing. Can't wait to see you again, babe. The next day, I asked him about it. Just a kid asking why someone else was calling him babe. He didn't blink. You misunderstood, he said. You're imagining things. That became the refrain of my childhood. Every doubt, every broken promise, every bruise on my mother's spirit, you misunderstood. And somehow she believed him. Or maybe she just didn't want to admit what she knew. He'd disappear for days. Come home with perfume on his shirt, bite marks on his neck. The only thing he was faithful to was the lie that we were still a family. He made everything look normal from the outside. He mowed the lawn, paid for my little league fees, took us out for dinner once a month to smile and pretend. But it was like living in a house staged for sale, polished, but empty. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the gaslighting. He never hit us, never yelled. No, he weaponized calm. Made you question your memory, your instincts, your own damn eyes. When I was 12, he left for a work trip. Never came back. No goodbye. No note. My mom tried to explain it away for weeks. He's just lost, she whispered one night. But he'll come back. But he didn't. She died 10 years later and he still never reached out. Never showed at the hospital, never called the funeral home. He was a ghost before she was in the ground. And now suddenly here he was, sitting across from me like nothing happened. Like history was some dusty book we could close and never open again. But I remembered every page. The second time he showed up, it was outside Clara's building. She called me from the lobby, voice tight and shaky. He's here. Your dad. Said he wants to talk. I told him to leave, but he wouldn't. I got there in 7 minutes flat. He was standing by the elevator like he belonged there, holding 2 coffees in his hand, smiling like he'd been invited. You brought her coffee? I asked, stepping between them. He shrugged. Didn't know what she liked, figured I'd try both. Thought it might be nice to talk. Just us. Family stuff. Clara stood behind me, stiff as a statue. I could feel her watching me, waiting to see what I'd do. What I wouldn't do. So I said it slowly and clearly, don't ever come here again. He blinked, confused. What's with the hostility? I'm trying to be a part of your life. You lost that right, I snapped. You walked out on it. You don't get to stroll back in now that you smell success. He took a step back, set the coffees down on the ledge like he didn't want to waste them. You don't mean that. We're blood. That matters. You're right, I said. It does matter. It matters that you taught me exactly what not to be. So hear me now, this is your last warning. Stay out of my life. He tried to guilt me. Said he was sick. That he had back issues. That he was getting his affairs in order. But it didn't land. He was the same manipulative coward, he just wore looser skin now. Clara and I walked past him in silence. As the elevator doors closed, he called after me. You'll regret this. One day you'll need your father. But I already had. I'd needed him at 13. At 17. When my mother took her last breath. And he wasn't there. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the county courthouse. He'd filed for financial support under adult dependent laws, claimed he was disabled, alone, and that I was neglecting him. My jaw clenched so hard I thought I'd break a tooth. He wanted to drag me into court. So I decided I'd make sure he regretted every step that brought him there. I didn't scream. Didn't rage. That's not how I was raised. I sat down with the court letter in one hand, a glass of bourbon in the other, and read every word like it was a puzzle. He claimed chronic back pain, early onset arthritis, and an inability to work. Said he had no income, no support system, and that as his only adult child, I was legally responsible for his care. There was a time that letter might have hurt. Yeah? It just lit a fuse. I forwarded it to my lawyer, Gabriel, a man who spoke in facts and filed truths like bullets in a clip. He called me within the hour. Unreal, he said. He's claiming dependency? Yep. You ever supported him financially? Not a cent. He hasn't even been in my life since I was a kid. Gabriel exhaled. All right. If he wants a courtroom, we'll give him one. But we won't just beat him, we'll dismantle him. Start digging. So I did. I hired a private investigator named Lenny. Quiet guy, former military, operated like a shadow. I gave him my father's full name, birth date, last known address, and 2 days later, he handed me a folder thick enough to land like a brick. Turns out my father had been busy these past few years, racking up debts, skipping out on loans, manipulating just about anyone foolish enough to trust him. He owed money to a former roommate, an ex-girlfriend, even a poker buddy from Nevada who'd been chasing him for 3 years. All of them thought he'd died or skipped town. They had no idea he'd simply changed zip codes and started over. He was also married. Again. To a woman named Jeanette, a retired nurse with solid insurance and a spotless credit history. Their wedding? Barely a year old. Lenny pulled the marriage license. I pulled the motive. He married her for the coverage. Digging deeper, I found out he'd been working under the table for a friend's contracting company, lifting boxes, unloading trucks, while simultaneously collecting disability checks. Fraud. Tax evasion. Hidden income. False dependency claims. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Gabriel said, let's build this like a case file. Piece by piece. Witnesses. Paper trail. Keep it airtight. And that's exactly what we did. He wanted a courtroom? I was going to give him a reckoning. It wasn't rage anymore. It was clarity. Cold, calm, focused clarity. I met with Gabriel in his office, a corner suite overlooking the city skyline I'd helped rebuild with tech and time. The same city my father thought he could waltz into and stake a claim. This is war, Gabriel said, flipping through Lenny's report. But we're not just defending, we're prosecuting. I nodded. He brought this to a courtroom. We're just bringing the truth with us. We started making calls. First, I tracked down his boss, the one paying him cash under the table. A guy named Vince who ran a warehouse supply company out in the suburbs. Vince was nervous at first, but when I showed him a copy of my father's disability filings, his face turned pale. I didn't know he was claiming government money, he stammered. Hell, I just needed help lifting pallets. If he's scamming disability. He is, I said. And I'm building the case. Next, I found his wife. Jeanette answered the door in a cardigan and orthopedic slippers. She looked tired but kind, the kind of woman who believed in people longer than she should. I didn't lead with the whole truth. I just asked how he was doing. How long they'd been married. Whether she knew about the lawsuit against me. No, she whispered. He told me he just wanted to reconnect with his son. That's all. I paused, then gave her the file. His debts. His fake bank statements. The copies of job logs from Vince's company. When she read the part about him using her insurance to cover procedures he didn't need, her eyes welled up. He told me I was his second chance. He says that to a lot of people, I said. By the end of the week, I had 12 people lined up, witnesses, creditors, co-workers, even one former landlord who swore under oath my father faked a work injury to get out of paying rent. Gabriel smiled as we built the exhibit binder. We're not just going to beat him in court, he said. We're going to make sure he never files another false document without remembering what this felt like. And Clara? She stood by my side the whole time. Said she'd never seen me more myself. That mattered more than I let on. He wore a borrowed suit and borrowed sadness. When I walked into that courtroom, he was already seated at the plaintiff's table, hands folded like a prayer he didn't believe in. His lawyer, a court-appointed man who looked like he handled mostly parking tickets and petty thefts, flipped nervously through a thin folder. Mine? Gabriel came in beside me, sharp as glass and 10 times as dangerous. We brought a binder thick enough to rattle the table when we set it down. I caught my father's eyes for a brief second. He looked away. The judge, a woman with tired eyes and no tolerance for theatrics, called the session to order. Mr. Briggs, she began, addressing my father, you're claiming physical incapacity, total financial dependency, and abandonment by your adult son? He nodded solemnly. Yes, Your Honor. I'm disabled. Alone. My son has means. I have none. His voice cracked on that last word. A performance. A lifetime of rehearsals finally on stage. Do you have supporting documents? She asked. His lawyer handed over a doctor's note, one I'd already had verified as outdated by 4 years, and a bank statement showing zero balance, scrubbed clean just last month. No mention of the $40,000 debt he owed. No mention of the side job. No mention of the wife he still lived with. Gabriel stood. With respect, Your Honor, we have evidence to the contrary. Substantial evidence. And then the doors opened. One by one, we called our witnesses. Vince, his boss, stepped up first. Confirmed that my father had worked for him for cash. that he regularly lifted 50-pound boxes 6 days a week. Then came the creditors, each with their own story, their own IOU never repaid. One by one, they painted the picture of a man who didn't need help, just an exit strategy. And finally Jeanette, his wife. She stood there in her cardigan and tired dignity, voice trembling as she testified that he had forged insurance documents, manipulated her trust, and lied about his financial state. By the time Gabriel handed the judge our exhibit binder, you could feel the oxygen leave the room. False claim. Fraud. Perjury. The judge said she needed a recess to review the evidence. I stepped into the hallway, the old rage humming quiet inside me. We hadn't even reached sentencing yet. But I knew we'd already won. They brought him back into the courtroom in cuffs. He didn't look like a man. He looked like an echo of one, shoulders hunched, lips pressed into a line, eyes darting like a trapped animal scanning for sympathy. But there was none left. The judge didn't waste words. "Mr. Briggs," she said flatly, "you committed willful fraud. You filed a false dependency claim under perjury. You manipulated financial documents and concealed employment income. The court finds your actions deliberate and egregious." He tried to interrupt. "Your Honor, Aya." She raised her hand. "You had ample opportunity to speak with truth. You chose deception. Silence." Then the gavel came down. 24 months in federal custody. 5 years probation. Full restitution to the state and all private debts formally documented. The IRS was notified. So was the insurance board. So was Jeanette's union. His world didn't just collapse. It unraveled, thread by thread, publicly. When the bailiff approached, he turned to me like he still had one card left to play. His mouth opened. A plea, maybe? An apology. But I stared right through him. Because here's the thing about con men, they never think the fall applies to them. They think charm is currency. That shame is temporary. That people forget. But I remembered. I remembered every slammed door. Every "you misunderstood." Every time my mother sat by the window waiting for headlights that never turned into our driveway. I remembered her funeral. How I stood there, shaking hands with strangers while the last person she ever loved didn't even call. He was no father. He was a cautionary tale. Gabriel and I stood in the lobby afterward, the cold marble echoing under our shoes. "He'll appeal," he said. "They always do." "Let him," I replied. Jeanette walked past us on her way out. She didn't speak, just gave me a quiet nod. A thank you without the words. Her insurance would be safe now. So would her retirement. She deserved that peace. Clara came up beside me and slipped her hand into mine. "You okay?" she asked. Getting there. Outside, the world kept spinning. People passed by, unaware that justice had been served one floor up. No headlines. No fanfare. Just the clean, simple sound of truth winning for once. And I'd made sure of it. The funny thing about justice? It doesn't come with fireworks. There was no parade, no standing ovation. Just a Tuesday evening, a quiet sky, and the hum of my apartment's radiator as I sat by the window with a glass of water and the court judgment in my lap. It was over. 2 years in prison. 5 more under the government's thumb. He wouldn't be conning anyone for a long time. The restitution payments would chip away at his ego dollar by dollar. His name was flagged in 3 financial databases. The insurance board was building a separate case. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still. I'd been running on instinct for months, research, strategy, court prep, witness wrangling. But now there was only this pause. The kind that comes when the fight is over and you realize the air tastes different. I spent the next few days tying off loose ends. Helped Jeanette file for annulment. She mailed me a card a week later with 2 words written inside. Thank you. Simple. Honest. The kind of thing my father never understood. Clara and I took a short trip up the coast. We didn't talk about the trial. Just walked beaches, watched the tide come in. She told me she was proud of me. That I'd broken something not in a destructive way, but in a generational way. A cycle. And she was right. Because I've heard what people say. That men become their fathers. That blood is destiny. But that's the thing about blood, it only flows one direction. You can't change what you came from. But you can decide what comes next. My therapist, I finally started seeing one, asked if I ever wondered what would have happened if I just let it go. If I'd ignored the letter, paid the settlement, kept my head down, I told him the truth, I would have never looked in the mirror the same way again. That man spent a lifetime avoiding consequences. I spent a year making sure they finally found him. And now? Now I wake up clean. I don't flinch when my phone buzzes. I don't look over my shoulder. My life is my own again. No strings. No shadows. No ghosts. It's strange, the things you carry after the war is over. Not anger. Not even pain. Just weight, the kind that sinks into your bones and never quite leaves. You stop expecting an apology. You stop waiting for some version of closure that looks like forgiveness. Instead, you build forward. That's what I've been doing. It's been 6 months since the sentencing. The house Clara and I live in now sits outside the city. Nothing fancy, just a place with enough space for a garden, quiet mornings, and a workshop out back where I can lose myself for hours fixing things that actually stay fixed. We don't talk about him much anymore. Not because it's forbidden, but because it's finished. He's where he belongs and we're where he never deserved to be happy. Safe. Whole. I still get updates sometimes. His lawyer tried to appeal the restitution amount. The court denied it. Jeanette finalized her annulment. His former boss, Vince, filed his own civil suit to recover under-the-table wages and damages. The dominoes keep falling long after I stepped away from the table. I didn't do this for revenge. Not really. I did it because I was tired of watching men like him escape gravity, of pretending that silence was strength and that letting go meant peace. Sometimes the only way forward is through the fire. And sometimes the only justice you'll ever get is the one you carve out yourself, document by document, lie by exposed lie. One morning last week, I got a letter forwarded through my lawyer. It was from him. Scrawled handwriting. 2 pages. Full of half apologies and twisted reasoning. Said he never meant for things to get so far. Said prison changed him. Said he wanted a second chance to be a father again. I folded the letter once without reading the second page and dropped it into the shredder. A father isn't someone who shows up when the cameras are rolling. He's someone who stayed. Who earned it? He lost the chance a long time ago. I stood by my mother when he wouldn't. I stood by Clara when he tried to break us. And when it mattered most, I stood up for myself. That's legacy. That's the truth I live with now.